Hey people, how is everybody today? Good morning. It's Anne's first day back on the job officially. I'm sorry that we're starting half a minute later out here. It is only 9:30 for me, and I had to drag the dog out and empty her this morning and do other things. Essentially, we're trying to fit everything into the schedule so that I don't have to get up at 6. Selfish me not wanting to get up at 6 a.m. for work. Oh no. This isn't an age when we are all wearing pajamas at home when we're working, or, apparently. That's what David said. He had 4 teammates who actually went 24 hours without getting out of pajamas. Apparently this is a new life goals thing. So let's see. Who we got? Yay, Numbat. You subbed. Thank you. Yay, Margaret. Yay, I'm groaning. Yay, Silverthorn. Yay, Otter Mama. Yay, everybody. Yay, Nomad Zeke. I'm back. Hey, Chewy Boots. Hey, Planer. It's good to see you. Good deal. Good to see everybody. Good to be back. Right. All right, so this is my new get up. For those who didn't see the test stream the other day, I have stolen David's desk. He has been gracious about it, but he has also been like, I can't wait till you get your own desk. Hey, D. Clearman, how's it going? Hey, Althai. Oh wait, you are in the other room. I was just talking about him, guys, and I won't reveal which one he is, but let's just say now he's gonna watch me and see if I badmouth him for stealing his desk. Hey, Jade. Good. I'm glad everybody's here. I'm glad everyone is here. Some of you are probably supposed to be working, but you're here anyway, and I appreciate it. Awesome. Okay, so today we're gonna experiment a little bit because I don't have all my paint yet. Hey, Clover. Hey, Noni. And hey, Fox. Cool. Oh, wow, 6-month sub. Good job, Nani. All right, and Sharky, hey. Yes, we're here. We're back. So I've been here almost a full week now. So I'm more combobulated than I was before, right? Let's see. The working is only just optional. Well, thank you, Kiriniko. I am glad to be back. Yes, it's awesome. So today we're gonna experiment because I don't have my full selection of paint. Because usually I have almost everything in Master Series, or at least I have a good portion of it. And of course, when I was at Reaper, I could just walk downstairs and get whatever I wanted. So now I've got to be a little more planned. I can see for future shows once my paint arrives. We have no idea when the mover is coming. I have to call them after the stream and find out. So yeah. So for now, hey Jay, it's good to see you. Oh yeah, Silverthorn with cat. Yeah, active cat. Yep. Some people are just calling their cats their coworkers and being done with it, because a cat is certainly not any more distracting than coworkers. Good deal. Yay! Okay, so what it came down to is I thought I would do some blonde hair on the Tara the Silent that I was puttying the other day. But then I realized that I do not have the blonde hair triad because my paint is in transit, a lot of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about mixing a blonde hair color out of any yellow that you might have. I think I have a fair selection of yellows, so we can get, or at least close, on several things. But we'll talk about why it's so easy, actually, to mix blonde hair, though beginners make a lot of mistakes with it because they tend to use a lot more yellow and not reach for the ochres. I don't even have ochres today, so we're just going to play with yellows and show you how to mix it out of whatever yellow you've got. Hey, Jesian, you made it at a more reasonable time. I know, right? Yeah, my time zone has shifted. But yeah, hi, Twisted Oma. How's my doggy taking the stairs? She's having some difficulty, Twisted Oma. She is an old dog, and this is more stairs, and she's never had to do this many stairs. She has to do stairs 4 times a day. So sometimes she's a little wobbly, but I have a sling for her, so I've been helping her out. So she's usually it's in the evening. In the evening, she really needs help with the sling. But otherwise, she's managing to get downstairs probably a little bit. She probably wants to go too fast now. So I have to kind of try to slow her down and keep her near the wall so she doesn't fall. But yeah, so we're adapting, right? We're adapting. There's a park right across the street. So when we go outside, she gets a nice walk around the park every time we go out. So that's a nice change for her. It's not like just getting let out in the yard anymore. Let's see. Yeah, it is what it is, right, Jazzian? I have no choice. So we're going to just adapt. until we can't adapt anymore. But in the morning, she's fairly spry and has very few problems. And it's just later in the day. So I'll have to use the sling when I have to use the sling. She's otherwise pretty happy. She's got dog TV up here. She looks out the window, like there's a huge window right here in the office, and there's another huge window and a deck. So she essentially can watch all the other dogs and people going by outside, especially now that it's like social distancing and people are able, like they're home, and so they're walking their dogs during the day more. So every once in a while I hear this woof. Because she's like, Mom, there's a dog right out there. So it's kind of funny. All right. Hey, Corsair. Yeah, I mean, she is old, Twisted Oma, so there is the danger of us just causing more degeneration faster by putting some strain on her rear legs. I'm hoping that she kind of builds some muscle, too. I'm trying to protect her and keep her see strong. The problem is we can't really see a veterinarian right now because of the social distancing. So I'm hoping that she kind of just kind of keeps going on until a lot of this stuff is passed and I can get her into a vet. We can assess some stuff and stuff like that. Yes, Tazlanch, I am officially back. All right, well, let's go to Minicam and let's actually chat while we paint instead of just sitting here and chatting. I figured that it would be like this my first day back, though. I figured that you guys would want to talk and chat and ask questions and things like that. So Justin does tell me that this new setup has great sound, so that's nice. Yay, hi, Garmage. Hello, bureaucratic buckaroo. I'm very happy to see you all, lively in the chat. So, hey, Beach Nuts. Hey, Dogfather. Yeah, right, Dogfather. Yeah, it's a hard thing, right? It's a hard call because you're not sure if you're hastening degeneration by putting strain on the system or if you're strengthening the system by putting strain on the system. And it really depends on what sort of disorder it is. She had lost a lot of muscle tone in her back legs, so it could be that with work and time, she will actually get better at the stairs. But I'm not certain. She's an old dog, and she's a little wobbly in her rear end, so... But yeah. Hello, Threads of Fates. Good to see you. All right, I'm going to switch to Minicam, guys. Hold on. Let me get over here. I have to stretch for this one now. She's a bigger dog. She does not have hip dysplasia, Jason. Because she was a breeding dog, we actually had her hips done at around 3 years. And so I can state with absolute certainty. Let me get Tara on a good focus here. Hold on. Let me get my palette out of the window. Get this out of the window. And then do a focus. There we go. But yeah, we did have her hips done before she was bred because that's standard in our breed. You cannot breed unless you have the hips x-rayed. So she actually has good hips, but over time you can still get arthritis. Any dog, even dogs with really tight hips can still get arthritis. I'm going to move my face cam just a tiny bit to where I'm more central. There we go. Hey, Anki, it's good to see you. So yeah. Happy time zone. Happy everything. All right, so here's our Tara. I did some green work on her chest area. Let me make absolutely dead sure she's in focus here. There, that's good. That looks sharp. All right, so we're going to talk about blonde hair. Yeah. And then after the stroke, they just lose functionality, right? Connectiveness. So that can be hard. So, all right. So the yellows that I have in my bag right now, because of my limited selection, are the yellows that I feel are the highest utility. So I have my lantern yellow, which is my orangey yellow. My clear yellow, which of course is a greenish yellow. It's doesn't have that orange tone. And then my NMM Gold Highlight, which I just like for general everything. And out of all of these, the easiest to build a blonde hair color with is going to be your NMM Gold Highlight. And the reason is that you have some ochre in this color. This has all 3 yellow pigments in it. I actually did, on my Patreon, did an article about this very early on in my Patreon career, so end of 2018, beginning of 2019. So if you're on there, you can go see the many uses of NMM Gold Highlight. It's very versatile, buttery yellow. It's got a bit of white in it also. So it's already kind of toward where you want to have a blonde hair. You probably could start a blonde hair with this if you wanted to. Let me see. Oh, I'm happy to see you too, Viman Aqua. Good deal. And thank you for the sub. Thank you for the Prime sub. Yeah, Garmage. That's with Kiri too, is when she climbs the stairs, you can tell she's more wobbly. And sometimes when she gets up and down. But otherwise, she's just a Kiri. But yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hip dysplasia is just, It is what it is, and unfortunately shepherds are prone to it. That's why our breed mandates hip x-rays for all breeding animals and as many of their litter mates as we can get too, because you want all the information on where the recessive genes might be. All right, so there's palette. So let's show you guys the NMM Gold highlight. Maybe we'll try to do hair just with this. It's probably pretty good. I'll actually illustrate how I do the other ones too. So if you've got any yellow, let's just line these up. We'll do lantern yellow, which is obviously too yellow for blonde hair. Oh, got a little bit of... Didn't shake it well enough. Yeah, they don't understand why they get so slow. That is the hard part, right? You can't explain to your dog why they can't do what they used to. Like Kiri can't jump like she used to. Although most of the time I can catch her now. I kind of spot her when she goes in the car. All right, so there is our lantern, which you can see is very orange. Let's put our clear on the other side of the NMM Gold highlight. Let me get this a little bit more in frame. There we go. Blonde hair is actually NMM Gold. No, Sergio is yelling at you, Alfie. Sergio is yelling at you right now. Because he's the one who in class said, you could paint hair like NMM. And everybody would think it would look amazing. But you'd be wrong. So I hereby call upon Sergio to not paint your hair like gold NMM. We can argue about this later. Yeah, Taslan, no, they get old and creaky, and we feel so bad for them. It's as bad as us getting old and creaky too, except that we understand why we're getting old and creaky. All right, so to create a blonde hair color, if you just have yellow, if like you're wandering around with a bag of clear brights, like I tend to, and you're dealing with a yellow like this, and you just don't have any other yellows. Hey, Jen Rose, yes, I'm back. The first step will be to add just a touch of brown. And you can use, these are the browns that I have. So let's look at what we've got here. Very sniffly this morning. I wonder what's in the air. All right. Getting things on camera here is more of a challenge. Because I've got the camera kind of low down so we can get close to the 28mm model. Oh, I've got, yeah, okay. So, I actually have an old HD. Ooh, ignore that, guys. So I've got Ruddy Brown, Harvest Brown, Ruddy Flesh. Oh, 2 Ruddy Fleshes. Obviously, I doubled up a little bit in my bag of randomly throwing things into stuff. So, and somewhere around here I would have my Russet Brown. But I don't know if I can see it in my bag of paint right now. Oh, let's talk about some Bones colors. Let's throw some polished leather in here. That won't work. I can't find my Russet Brown, so we're just going to deal with it. So any of these colors will work for creating blonde hair. And the reason is, yeah, sniffles intensify. I don't know why I have a sniffle this morning, but it probably is an allergy thing. Yeah, Threads of Fate, I feel you, because, you know, I get sick very seldom. Very seldom. Hey, Skelsey, yes, indeed, I am a California girl now. Me and Kiri both. All right, so the reason these all work is to create a blonde hair from a yellow is that none of them, you'll notice, is extremely dark. And what this means is that none of these colors has a lot of black in it. If we wanted to reach for, say, a blackened brown, we would run into problems. Because if you'll remember, when you have a lot of black in a color and you mix it with a yellow, you can go green. And how badly you go green then is going to depend on how much non-black pigment is in that dark brown that you're using. So any color like Muddy Brown, 9028, Ruddy Leather is a great and versatile color. I recommend everybody get it. It does have some black in it, but the other pigments, the oxides in it, overwhelm that black. So if you need a medium dark brown that's warm, it's very reddish because of the red oxide in it. And it's just a very utilitarian brown for mixing with other things. Obviously, polished leather and ruddy flesh are very similar. The polished leather has more orange in it. The ruddy flesh has a little bit more toward a darker tone, not as orangey. Harvest Brown is extremely orange. And then Ruddy Brown here, the old HD, is actually also, it's very similar to Ruddy Leather. These two I recommend ruddy leather as a substitute for ruddy brown if you do not have it. Both have a very high percentage of brown oxide, which is why they both have, and brown oxide tends to be a little reddish, thus the ruddy name on both of them, ruddy brown and ruddy leather. So that's why you've got that. They're very similar colors, as you can see. Different pigment mix. This is ruddy brown is actually one of the secret clear brights. So you will get an equivalent to ruddy brown, or actually a slightly improved equivalent to ruddy brown, when the Kickstarter colors come out. The oxide brown, ruddy brown. I wanted to bring it back because it's such a useful color. So we will get it when Kickstarter actually ships. Kickstarter 5. Thanks, Scott Beal. Thank you. Thank you for the welcome back. All right, so any of these colors mixed with yellow is going to make a blonde hair color. And the differences are just going to depend on obviously how much, how orangey you're already starting. Like if we do polished leather, it's going to have a very different effect from if we do like ruddy leather. So like those, because this is just going to take it a little bit. It's going to stay pretty vibrant yellow, right? Because this is very yellowish color to begin with. So let's do that. Let's actually put some polished leather into our clear yellow. And then let's put some ruddy leather into our lantern yellow. And clear yellow is going to give you similar effects to like if you use canary yellow or candlelight. And notice how little I'm doing. I just really squeeze a little drop onto the side. So this is about 4 drops of clear yellow, and that's about half a drop of the polished leather. So probably if you wanted to multiply that, you'd be more like 8 to 1. So as you can see, you only want a touch of brown. You just want a little. You don't want to lose the yellowy tone, right? Because blonde hair is golden. But you want to essentially mute down this bright yellow, because bright yellow is the entirely wrong color for blonde hair. So the first thing you do is you add that little touch. Let's get our other color set up too. Now you can see that this yellow is not as bright. This is the NMM Gold Highlight. And it doesn't have any brown in it, but the oxide, the yellow oxide in it, which is like yellow ochre, has a mustardy browny color to it, and that is what is giving that a more muted color, and why you could probably use that straight up for a golden blonde hair. So we got our ruddy leather. Let's do our same little drop. That was probably a big drop, so we'll see. Don't sweat it too much, just kind of adjust. That's why I started with 4 drops instead of my usual 6 or 8 drops of yellow, because I knew that I was going to want to adjust depending on how much brown I got in it. And I mean, if you end up with more of a brownish yellow, you're just going to end up with that for the blonde hair. Like, you know, there are definitely blondes that have more brown or ashy tones in their hair. There we go. So that's mixed up to be that. And right now it looks ugly as sin. But that's why we add our next magical ingredient. So, oh no! You know what? I don't have paint water. I'm without paint water. I suppose I could appeal to my boyfriend to come and rescue me, but I think I actually have a paint water cup right across the way. So I'm going to grab it and pour some water into it. Total strategic issue with Anne. 1 second. Hold on, everybody. I will get my magical paint water cup. This was total Anne not preparing well enough here. How you forget paint water. This is the problem with me taking over David's desk and not being set up to actually paint here, because when we paint together in the evening, we paint on the kitchen table. So I don't have actually a setup that I'm just leaving set up, which I always did with at home, right? Or at Reaper, I was always bringing my paint tray up. But I do have water. So I'm just going to have to pour some of the water in there. Yay. Some of my drinking water, right? Do not drink your paint water, but you can use your drinking water as paint water, as long as you put it in another receptacle. There, much better. Don't drink your paint water. Threads of Fate. Yeah, it is a big move, and I still don't have all my stuff. Pro stream. Yeah, Rathmore. No, we're non-pros. We are not professionals here. Yeah, essentially, I'll just leave a paint water over here. It got doubly screwed up because David had to do a Skype call at this computer over the weekend, and so he unplugged the internet, and things got shifted, and so it was double hard. All right, so there you got a brownish yellow, and now we're gonna do this. We're gonna mix this in. It'll get us a different brownish yellow, because remember, for this one we used a brighter, lighter yellow, clear yellow, and we used a brown that was really close to yellow itself, right? It has a lot of yellow in it. You can tell. Did you just give me a sub to the Reaper channel? You're very silly, Numbat. Hi, non-zero value. It's good to see you too. Blame bug lips. Yes, exactly. It's like, yeah, what blending in your stomach? Oh, wait. I need to actually mouse over and thank Numbat. Thank. There we go. Sweet. There we are. No flavored paint, Wavy. I have been asked for flavored paint. It was random, and it just decided I needed to get it, huh? That's hilarious. All right. So we've got 2 colors now, and you can see how the addition, even though the polished leather didn't shift it much, you can see that it's now darker than that one. So we've got, so you can see the difference between using a lighter brown, a more tan brown, and using a darker brown. The pigments here are also very different. Polished leather is going to have more yellow pigment in it, obviously, because you can see how little it shifts. It's not going to have nearly as much brown pigment in it. Yellow's a very weak pigment. You may have noticed you can easily shift it when you add anything else to it. Like when you try to mix an orange and you add a tiny bit of red and it goes really dark orange and you're like, what? So the same holds true with the brown. You add just a little and it shifts it quite a bit. So you can assume then that in any yellowish brown, any brown that's very, very yellow, you actually have fairly little brown pigment. Whereas in these stronger browns, you can assume there's a lot more brown pigment, even if there is yellow in it. And often with these reddish browns, there isn't, or you'd get an orange brown. So it's very, it's obvious color mixing, right? If you're looking at a brown, you're kind of judging whether it's orange or yellow or red. You're probably right. It has one of those, the appropriate pigment in it. So paint has a flavor. The flavor is nope. Actually, people used to say the Vallejo's tasted minty silverthorn, which always grossed me out. I was a brush licker for a while, but I could never, I rinsed my brushes very, very well before I would put them in my mouth. And I haven't been a brush licker now for years. It's been probably 10 years. It feels wrong when I forget. But I've trained myself pretty well at this point to do the hand squeezy thing where I take it, rinse it out, and then squeeze it out of my hand, and that gives it a point. So, which I do recommend. I do not recommend brush licking. Scale 75 tastes horrible. Oh, hey, yeah, that's true, Tazlunch. I could go in the other direction. Instead of flavoring like bubble gum, I could flavor it like something awful. But then somebody would still think it was awesome. Oh, and Amadzi, do not taste the weasel, please. Yeah, if you grow up on enamels, no way will you brush lick. Yeah, you never want to brush lick. It's just, you never know what's in there. Hey, Art of Mike Disney, it's super to see you. We're creating mixes for blonde hair today because Anne has a limited selection of paint because my moving truck hasn't gotten here yet. So I had to pretty much make do. So we're showing you how to mix blonde hair. Oh, no, planer. Yeah. Yes, having a great day. It's my first day back at work, Mike Disney. Well, Wavy, I guess. Take your chances if you want. It is your health. Hey, Bardic Kitty. I love your name. Yeah, I just use specific, actually my my current paint cup is Unikitty. Let's see, Unikitty. I actually have a holographic Unikitty paint cup. Yes, it is very unique, and thus it keeps me from drinking out of it. And then when I am drinking water, it's usually in my Yeti, so it's very, very, very different size, different color, different weight. So I don't drink paint water anymore unless I'm at a con. And then it can get confusing if I don't have my my appropriate paint cup. Yeah, Unikitty is my hero. Yes, never, ever, ever. Yes, Althai is correct. Never, ever use paint water cups and drinking water cups that match. At cons, we sometimes are forced to do this, and it's just fraught with peril. Do not do it. Yes, yeah, my Unikitty cup. It is my favorite paint water cup, I will say. I have Reaper ones, too. They're the backup cups. But I love my Unikitty cup. And actually, Shannon Stiltz, who is Reaper Brian's wife, actually gave that to me. She knew I loved Unikitty, and we were complaining once that there wasn't enough Unikitty merchandise, but she had gotten that with a Happy Meal or something, so she actually gave it to me. So, yes. Oh, glass mole jars. That's a good idea. Yep. Hey, Achilles Blade, it's good to see you. Yay! All the regulars are coming in. They're like, hey, wait, Anne came back. Yes, it's going to be 11:30 Central, instead of 11 from now on, just because I'm getting up early out here on the West Coast, so I wanted to make sure that I could get my breakfast and getting Kiri out, and just in case Kiri had issues, if we had it a second out, I needed to make sure that I had enough lead time in the morning to do that. So anyway, let's get back to our paint mixing. So we've gotten our brown mixed into our yellow. It doesn't really matter. As you can see, what brown you pick is just going to either shift it extremely or shift it not so much. Your next step is to add a drop of white. Boop. Oh, I hear the coffee machine. I hear the espresso machine going out there. Apparently I'm too boring, and David has decided he needs more caffeine to sit through my stream. I'm just joking. All right, so 1 drop of white in there, 1 drop of white in there. And this is going to start to give us more of a blondish color. And then we can kind of decide. Now, what we've actually got here, now that I'm looking at them, is the darker one is actually a pretty good blonde shadow color. So we may just use that as our shade. Yes, I am safe and sound, Achilles Blade. I don't have my stuff yet. The moving truck had to deliver. Essentially, I was the first one they picked up. I'm going to be the last one they unload. So they picked up on the 3rd, and then they picked up 3 more loads, and then they've been driving and delivering. So I'll call them today to find out what time this week they're going to be delivering. Hopefully, like tomorrow or Wednesday. But I'm not sure if they drive on the weekends. There's all sorts of limitations on how long they can drive, and of course now with the COVID stuff, it's different, right? So yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Casmania. Yeah. All right. So we've got... Yes, I've got some paint. I had to have some paint, right? I actually brought all of my streaming gear, like all my lights and everything, with me in the car. Like I put my big old fool carrier up on top of it. And just went for it because I knew that it might be Friday till the truck arrives. And I didn't want to be unable to stream. I wanted to be able to get back to streaming for you guys as soon as I possibly could. Yeah, the other loads were pretty much like on the way, Chef of Love, which is the nice thing. He told me there was 1 or 2 in Arizona, like actually, and that was the way David and I drove, or I drove and David drove out. I drove through Santa Fe, and then I went down to Phoenix, and David and I met in Phoenix, and then he drove back up with me on that last 11-hour or 12-hour leg to San Francisco. So that was really nice of him to come down and meet me. But yeah, so they were delivering a load in Phoenix, right where I was. So I know, I like exactly, like there, I think it was 2 in Phoenix and 1 in the LA area. And then they drive up here. So yeah, it depends really on how big those loads were. Mine was relatively small, but I know other people definitely have a lot more stuff to move than I did. I pruned a lot. All right, so here we are. So you can see that the white has it's gotten us really close to this, right? It's still a little bit more yellow, and I don't know if I like that very much. This is where we tune it, right? Now, we could just put a little bit more of our brown in there, and that would be probably a pretty good idea. The other thing we could do, if we've decided to use this color for a shadow, is we mix a little bit of this shadow color into that. So maybe we'll try that and see. Because if you remember, if you have 2 different colors and you're using them to shade or highlight each other, mixing a little of one into the other makes them harmonize a bit better, because then they're more similar, so they won't fight. And so let's do just a little bit of that. Yeah. And that tones down our yellowish color. It's still a very vibrant blonde. If you decided this was too yellow, you could add a little more white, or you could add a little bit more of the mustardy color to make it work. But as you can see, this is quite close to the NMM Gold Highlight. So you could totally use NMM Gold Highlight. You grab some water and mix that up. You could totally use this as a base coat. Or now, since it's now lighter than the other one by a little bit, what we could do is mix a little bit of this into this. And then we can add some white to the NMM Gold Highlight and use that as our highlight. Bloop, bloop. And we'll add a couple drops. So that was 4 drops of NMM Gold Highlight. Now I'm adding 2 drops of white. So I'm significantly shifting it. NMM Gold Highlight already has a bit of white into it, so we're not going to compromise it by doing this. It's going to be pretty predictable. All right. So there we've got our colors. So let's try this all and see what we can do. Get our browns out of the way. They are definitely taking over the scene right now. Let's make sure that I'm getting all you guys. Yeah, yeah, and I'm bad. I had to shift it because I needed time in the morning to make sure I can get the Kiri out and make sure if she had to go twice, that I could do it and make sure I could get my breakfast in. You know, um, yeah, you could use this for NMM Gold, but you would need to go a bit browner on the down end because you do need that drama with NMM Gold. So maybe since I used ready leather, you could take a bit of this, add some more ready leather to it. It would be it'd be a different, very different NMM than I typically do. I go a bit more brown. So this would be more vibrant gold, essentially, is what you'd end up with. Yeah, I mean, Alfie was right back in when I was giving him crap earlier about hair and NMM Gold. The colors are perfectly similar. You could totally use that for each, and that's what I mean when I'm talking about with color theory. If you use blonde hair or you use NMM Gold, what that counts as is yellow on your model. So it doesn't count as a neutral, even though it's a hair color. Or it has brown in it, but it still looks yellow, so it counts as yellow when you're looking at the number of colors you have on your model. So that's why you see a lot of people, if they choose a blonde scheme, they'll go purple somewhere else on the model because they're doing the complementary colors, because purple, they know that purple will look good next to blonde hair. The other easy color theory thing to do would be to go like red or blue, because red, yellow, blue are the primary color triad. So you could always get away with red or blue as a good color choice next to yellow. And having used the blonde hair, if I do go with, as far as the metals on her, I may well use a lot of gold NMM on some of her buckles and fittings, because I know that it'll go with her hair color, and it'll also repeat this light color around the model. So there we go. And obviously yellow, not the best coverage color, even though we have added white, and that has helped. Remember, this was built with clear yellow, so it actually does not have a lot of coverage, but adding the white and the brown to it obviously gave us better coverage. It's not real solid. We'll have to do a second coat probably, but it is nonetheless there. So just getting her little strands of hair around her face. Normally I do the skin first, but I felt like I had more color options for the blonde hair, and I wanted to talk about mixing a bit. Because, yay, mixing. This doesn't have too much water in it. Maybe just 1 drop. There's about 6 drops of paint at this point in each of these, I believe. So it's about a 6-to-1. And I didn't go down to 4-to-1 because I know yellow doesn't cover. I wanted it to have a little bit more coverage. And she's got a little hair tie there. So just blocking it in. And, you know, usually you can kind of see if you're going to need another coat, which I will. So let's talk about skin colors that you're going to use with blonde hair. Probably the best triad to use with blonde hair is the fair skin triad. Obviously, because blondes tend to be fairer skin. Not always. But the fair skin triad works just fine for blonde hair. You can also go with the tanned skin triad if you want a darker tanned blonde, which is totally within the realm of possibility. Both of those triads tend to work very well with blonde hair. The one that I find that usually does not look right with blonde is rosy skin, because it's so very reddish. It looks a little odd. You usually, I mean, you can see a very rosy redhead, but they tend to be fair and rosy. And so if you go too pink with the ground of the skin tone, it just doesn't look as good, I think. Where rosy skin triad really shines is with redheads and brunettes. Looks fantastic with redheads and brunettes. There. Tips for people who have not painted a miniature before. Yes. Well, if you're doing bones, oh yeah, there is. Sorry, Clover, I missed that question. I started painting and then I stopped watching. So let me catch up. Yeah. I didn't have the blonde paint triad, Clover, because I don't have all my paint yet. The moving truck hasn't gotten here yet, so I decided to show you guys how to mix it. So essentially I was saying, if you watched the earlier part of the show, You can really mix the blonde hair out of any yellow plus almost any brown, and then just add a bit of white. And that'll give you an appropriate blonde color. Okay. People who have not painted a miniature before. Actually, I can illustrate all of these. First, mount your mini on something. I use a wood block that I painted black, or I use pill bottles filled with pennies, or I use old film canisters, or, almost anything. I have a Red Bull energy shot that I have poster putty on top. And this is just poster putty. Any color will work. The orange tends to be really sticky. I think it's the Elmer's brand. Blue tack is what I usually use. That's a little bit paler. This is my platform for big minis. Knead it a little bit to make it nice and warm and sticky before you put the mini on it, so the mini sticks better. It's like silly putty that way, where you have to work it, or Sculpey, to work it to make it softer. And that way it'll cling. You can kind of fold it up around the base of the miniature, and it keeps the miniature perfectly here. And that means that you're not rubbing paint off while you're painting, which is a big frustration point when people start painting miniatures. Second tip is going to be get a brush with a good point. Even if you have a whole bunch of kind of crappy, really cheap brushes, if you can take care of your brushes, then it's worth getting a more expensive sable that will hold a tip. And just kind of reserve that brush if you have to, if you don't want to use it all the time and risk it getting all gummed up. Just keep it in reserve for small details. But the sable, as you can see, can really give you a razor point to work with. And having a brush that holds a decent tip, again, is going to minimize your frustration when you're trying to paint all of these very small details. Another recommendation is to do larger models with bigger details at first when you're starting to get in, because it's going to be a little easier than trying to do all these little buckles and straps. And so again, less frustration, unless you every model you paint, your brush control is going to improve on. So if you start bigger and then slowly work smaller with smaller and smaller details, you get better results, and it'll also be more relaxing and less stressful. Next tip is to thin your paint a little bit. All of these have at least 1 drop of water added for 6 drops of paint. When you're base coating, you can use it straight out of the bottle, but even then I tend to thin it a little bit. The thinner paint comes off your brush easier. So essentially, again, all of these tips are meant to save you frustration when you're learning how to paint. And the last tip I have is only load up your brush partially. So very little paint on the brush. So I at most will do usually a third to a half of the brush in paint. And what this does is that capillary action is going to pull the paint backward through the brush. But if you only load up half of it, it's never going to get back here to the ferrule. And the important part about that is that when paint cakes in here, the brush goes poof and it won't hold a point anymore. So that's why you want to be careful and only use a little bit of paint. So most of the time you'll see me, if you see me, watch me load my brush, I'll dip it in and then I'll actually wipe off most of the paint and then I'll paint. Especially if you've thinned your paint, it'll still come off the brush just fine and you've got enough paint on your brush. If you try to put a big puddle, if you don't clear off your brush, it can be troublesome because then you've got all this thick paint everywhere, puddling and pooling and trying to go everywhere. If you have only a little bit of paint on your brush, you can control where it goes, and control, again, makes things less stressful for you, and makes it work better. So all those tips: very little paint on your brush with a very good tip, mount your miniature on something, thin your paint just a little, and then choose models with larger details when you're just starting out. And let's see here now. Blonde Tabaxi. Well, blonde, in any case, Cypher Dragon, is going to be just like I'm doing here. I mean, blonde is you're going to start with a medium yellow with a little bit of brown in it and a little bit of white in it. And then you're going to use a browner color for your shading and take a little bit of this and add some white for your highlight. It's going to be pretty easy at that point. If I'm not sure what a tabaxi is, so if it has patterns or something and you're asking about that, just let me know. Pale skin with subtle pink red in the skin that was blonde. Yeah, but you have to be subtle pink. Like the rosy skin, the reason I say it doesn't work garbage is because all of those skin colors are really pink. So you can do a blonde with rosiness in, and you should, right? Because I mean, my hair is fairly light, but I have a lot of red color. So, but your base skin tone should be more neutral. And then if you're going to introduce rosy tones, really look, oh, it's catfolk. Yeah. So if you're trying to do a blonde tabaxi with patterns are an entirely different thing, but you would use the same thing. Like if you're doing a blonde tabaxi, you're going to use the same colors as a blonde anything, right? So I could even use these colors for a leopard if I wanted. They're actually real close. So yeah. Keeping an eye on the time. Oh, my computer is on the old time. Haha, that's funny. I'm like, wait, it's not afternoon. Oh, wait, it is in Central Time. So I put a second coat on this. Now I'll probably go in. Oh, that's right. I was talking about rosiness on faces. So I could get... Let me see. Yeah, anime people, actually anime artists, Garbage, are very, very good at adding rosy tones exactly where they need them on otherwise flat skin tones. In the UK, it's dinner time. Brushes for large mini base coats. I do use larger brushes. I mean, if you looked, yeah, you could use this for Yellow Lab too, although I think it's a little bit yellow. Yellow Labs tend to be a bit more creamy, so I might use this as the base, and instead of using something like this that's very yellow. Let's mix them and find out. Yeah, so that gives you an off gold color to mix the highlight and the shadow. Essentially, your midtone is usually your most saturated, your most yellow tone. So if you just mix your highlight and shadow, you can get a more muted yellow color, and I could say that would easily be a Yellow Lab color. Then thin this down and use it to shade, use that to highlight. Hello, Paul John's Life. It's good to see you. Yeah, anime techniques are, yeah, exactly. They're very, very good. Brushes for large minis, Hyderman. I use big ones and I use flats. This is actually not as big. This is a Kalish brush. And I don't remember if it's a number 2 flat. But essentially, when I go to bigger, like dragons, like if I'm going with like Gemstone Dragon here, you know, obviously the key here, and actually go and watch my, if you have time, you can watch the Dance of Death stuff with Reaper Toolbox, which is the Wednesday show. And I did a lot of dragons. I was using a bigger flat brush to base coat them. But essentially look at the surface you're trying to base coat and choose a brush that's big enough that you can cover the surface fast, but still small enough that you can get these details or get around these little details, right? So I usually use flats for these big surfaces because they can hold a lot of paint and they cover the surface extremely fast. Clover, I have been painting. The move's going well in Paul John's life, actually. It's we're adjusting. Kiri is adjusting to stairs, and I'm adjusting to be back in an apartment. But I love this area. It's really beautiful, and I'm just adoring the weather. So yes, Clover, I've been painting since I was really little. Like I pretty much picked up. I was an artistic kid to begin with, but I picked up my first miniature set when I was around 9. But I was painting with testers enamels at that point because, you know, that was what was available. We had those for model cars for my brother, so that was what I tried first. I kind of putzed around with miniature painting here and there because I was doing D&D. I ran D&D game for my brother, and I gamed with other local people, especially in high school. Oh, I accidentally used my highlight color. Foolish Anne, I got distracted. Let's paint over that. You can see the highlight color covers a lot better, though, because it's got more white in it. White always helps coverage. I went away to college, and that's when my miniature painting career, I think, really took off. I was going to art school, but I also was, I found a gaming group locally, and then I started working at the local game store. Once I started working at the local game store, I was doomed because they were like, you can paint, you need to play Warhammer with us. And so I got into Games Workshop, and I started painting armies. But I was painting like Battletech mechs for my boyfriend at the time and stuff like that. But it was only with starting Warhammer that I got very interested in being good. Because, and in really looking into the techniques that make a good miniature. Because I was looking at Games Workshop's magazine, White Dwarf, and they have the Golden Demon Painting Competition, which is a national level competition, and there was just amazing models in there. So I started looking at those and going, I bet I could do this, you know, and kind of trying to learn techniques. I learned a lot. I'm a lot self-taught. Okay, so let's do shadows real quick. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the shadows pretty much underneath where the light's not hitting. So if the light is going at us from this direction, let's see, there, this direction, then you can see there's a shadow underneath here. I will continue with my biography in a second. And we do want to shade all down here underneath this ponytail. So we're going to put a lot of dark there. We might want a little bit of shadow here. Pretty much with hair, anywhere there's a really big crevice, I want to bring out that detail. So up here on the top of the head, you're going to have light, and then you're going to have it kind of falling off the sides. Like where the hair goes vertical, that's where not a lot of light's going to fall, right? Because it's kind of skittering off the sides of the strands then. It's not like beaming directly on this top part. So you can put a shadow just right there. Kind of in the middle of the hair mass. And if we want to bring out these locks of hair around her face, we can put a shadow in there. And we also want to shadow down the part. Boop. Let's bring that out. The hair is a little bit goopy here, but I'm going to try to just kind of bring out different locks of it. And when you can see a little clump or a little lock, you know, just kind of put a shadow around it. Put some shadow down here on the underside of this. Anywhere the light's not going to hit it. Use your shadows. The shadows in hair are what they're really good for, and what they're usually most utilitarian in is in bringing out the different locks of hair. So if you can see a big delineation like this strand here, like you can see kind of between strands, put a shadow in that line so that you can bring out those strands later. And if you don't have any that you can see, you can create one. Just create a couple of different locks in there so that you can highlight and create some drama in a moment. All right, so yeah, once I got it in my head that I could, you know, learn to paint really well, there wasn't a lot of resources. There was One List Painting or Painting One List. There's a Yahoo group, but it wasn't like anybody was doing videos yet, right? Or even many tutorials. So I had to kind of figure it out on my own. And so it took a lot longer, but I actually kind of credit that with being able to teach you guys, because if I hadn't had to analyze so much, creating volumes, Jazzion, exactly, Sergio. If I hadn't had to analyze so much how to improve my own painting, I don't know that I would be able to explain it as well as I do to you guys. So kind of being self-taught, I think, created a methodology for me where I naturally try to figure out why it works when I'm doing something, and that way I can pass that on to you guys. You don't have to do all that. Like nowadays, people can get very good very, very fast because you've got so many tutorials, you've got so many people teaching, and it's great, right? It totally saves you guys the agony that I went through. Hey, Caprera, thank you for the sub. Yes, Valendar, I am back. It'll be 11:30 instead of 11 Central Time, since I'm now out in early land, and I need to make sure I get the dog squeezed out before I get on the stream. Yeah, it is a lot easier now, Wavy. Analyze. Yeah, funny, Jazzion, funny. That is a very, very casual drop. That's funny. Very few women, actually, in the Games Workshop. I think a couple of the sculptors were female. But otherwise, when I worked for Games Workshop, which was around 2002, very few women. A lot of women in the accounting department, weirdly. All right, so I'm going to put in those shadows. Great, awesome. And I'm going to see in a bit if I might need more. But now it's time to highlight. So now that is browned out. You can see how adding all those shadows has made the hair more brown. So it's less yellowy, right? So yeah, much smaller company back in the 90s. No joke, Wavy. Fred, if you'd had YouTube 30 years ago, I would have been thinning my paints all this time. Yes, and probably wet blending. Probably OSL and MM. Yes. She was the only woman there at the time. I believe it, Wavy. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, habits, you've got to be conscious of them, Dogfather, I think. And once you are conscious of them, you have to kind of figure out what prompts you to do them. Like, you know, is it that, you know, that I keep my paint water cup here, that I splatter all over the place, or is it, what's your trigger, right? You have to figure out what makes it possible for you to do that habit. And then you need to make that like more inaccessible, like less easy to do, because habits become habits because they're very easy, easy, accessible, and, they're right there. Whatever it is that you're doing, it's easy to do it. If you make your habit harder to do, where you have to go out of your way to do it, that's the key to breaking it. So like for brush licking, and the other one, also being conscious of it, like really making a conscious effort. When I became a non-brush licker, when my friend got really sick, essentially, and they thought it might have been the brush licking, the paint, because otherwise they couldn't find anything else in her environment that would have led to it. That convinced me that I needed to stop brush licking. And so I had to make a conscious effort to, one, to stop doing it, to be aware of when I was doing it, and two, to create a different habit, right? To take its place. Garmage, you're funny. Today's kids will never understand our struggles. But yeah, replacement behavior. So instead of brush licking, for me, it's rinse out the brush, kind of dab it off on the side, and then this hand thing that I do, which is I bring it up and I'm squeezing the water out with my pinky, essentially. And you can see that gives me a perfectly awesome point. So that behavior replaced my brush licking behavior slowly. And to this point, it's like second nature. Like I didn't even notice I was doing it until I started analyzing it. Yeah, Kapur, exactly. See, your friend gets sick and then you have to really question what you've been doing. Yeah, I know, right? And yeah, and more paint in stores. So of course I worked at a game store, so I had plenty of paint, although I didn't have many different lines. Like I didn't understand, like I had Games Workshop and Ralpartha, I think, at the time I was doing it. So now we're going to take our highlight color, by the way, and we're going to kind of highlight these bits of locks that are standing out. That actually probably is a ribbon. I may need to go back and paint that differently. But anyway, this lock here is definitely, and these are the strands this is where you start really bringing out the detail in the hair. And if you want, you can hit some of these strands that are a little bit away from the light, because hair is shiny and it would get some reflection. Just a little bit of highlight can help to bring out the little strands down here. And the other thing is that you're also going to be bringing up your highlights on hair to pure white. And the reason you do that is because hair is shiny and reflective. So just like metal, and this is again what Althai was talking about earlier, that hair is like an MM a lot. But because it is shiny and reflective like metal, that is why you get that pure white highlight eventually to make it look correct. If you don't go up to pure white, on like the crown of the head and some of the areas that are facing the light, your hair won't look quite right. And this is true even in black, and that's why black hair is so very hard to do. So I'm going to go up here. I really feel like I need a little bit of shadow here. Happy Mondays, Ambies. Yeah, some pigments are toxic, but And not even some pigments, but also just like a company that doesn't use very high-grade pigments, you can get contaminants in there that you don't even know about. They found that out when they did some spectral analysis on some paints a while ago. If if the QC at the colorant factory isn't strong, you can get a lot of toxic contaminants. So, but yeah, a lot of even artist tube paint lines are moving away from the cadmiums and other paints that are toxic now, and using equivalents, kind of like we do at Reaper, where we are striving for non-toxic paints so that if your kid accidentally drinks a bottle, you don't have to really freak out. You still need to get them to the emergency room because they need to get that stuff out of them, but you don't have to like panic, like it's not going to kill them. I'm going to get this strand up here. Going to kind of, and when you're doing hair, if you can't hit every strand, you really don't have to worry about that, actually. Just try to stroke your brush in the direction the strands would go. So I'm trying to get these strands at the top of the head. If you can hit a strand like this one here, do so. But don't sweat it. Don't freak out if you can't hit all the strands. Just make sure that your brush strokes are in the direction that the strands should go. And that will be usually good enough. Yeah. Yeah, I think our flow improver is pretty good, actually. And our medium is just a different version of a non-toxic base we already use. So So yeah, Partha became Iron Wind Metals. Dennis Clearman is correct. Or David Clearman is correct. D. Clearman. So Iron Wind still exists, but I don't think the Partha paints exist. Like they don't do, if they do paint still, it's not the same formulation. I did like a couple of their colors and I hung on to them for a long time. I like their salmon color. I still think I haven't quite replicated it. Maybe we'll have to recreate it at some point. So here you can kind of see I've got some definition. If I decide like that's too big of a block there, then I can come back with my shadow. Like if I look at this and I'm like, oh, that just looks weird. I need more strands. I can grab my shadow color and kind of put a streak down the middle where I can now see there's a little bit of a line. Get some darker color here. Break up the big mass of blonde hair. There we go. Just wanted to make sense. I actually find hair to be a little bit easier on larger models. The hair is usually sculpted a little bit more realistically, although this is Werner hair, so it's some of the better hair out there now. I think it is problematic also, the new 3D sculpting trend. I think it's very difficult to do fur and hair, the sculptors have told me. So essentially it's not as easy to paint it either. So that's the top of the head is starting to come along really well. Yeah, same formulas, but I wonder if they sell the same base, Cranston, because it's very hard, unless they were using a base that was very, very commonly in use. There's a lot, paint companies do a lot of revision of their bases. So I bet they're using the same like pigment formulas. That doesn't surprise me. But if they were still using the same paint base, I'd be like really surprised. Because, I mean, at Reaper, we used to be subject to cancellations all the time. And only when we got big enough do we become immune to cancellations. Where now our paint company, even if they cancel a paint, they will make it just for us because we sell enough. Essentially, we'll buy enough from them that they can do it. Yeah, it's actually not grain Caprera. It's actually the flattening medium. A lot of paint companies, if you're dealing with a house paint or industrial paint company, which most hobby paints actually do work with, the flattening medium that they use in a matte paint is actually clay, and it's not finely ground because it doesn't have to be to go on a wall. Right? And so what essentially you're coming up with is a flattening medium that's particulate that isn't fine enough for the eye to ignore it. So when you start using higher quality flattening mediums, which are much finer, then you get out of that. So that's actually, it's not even that the paint is finer grain is has nothing to do with the base. It actually is almost, and that's true of almost any paint. If you see particulate matter, I'll bet you that it's the flattening medium, and it's why a lot of bases are not flat. Like a lot of miniature paints have a little bit of shine, is because probably those companies don't have access to, say, some of the flattening mediums that are really fine, like we do in Reaper. Now, obviously, Scale 75 does, because they actually pull out a very, very dead matte paint in their fantasy line, I think. But a lot of miniatures companies seem to just forego the flattener because they don't want particulate. So I find that very interesting. It's just like which companies you're working with, what you have access to, right? We work with a very large company, and so we have a lot of options in materials and additives that we can play with in our paint. Fantasy's more satin. Oh, thank you, Jason. Yeah, SC line then. Things that cause cancer, it's about usage, right? Obviously, skincare products have been using talc for forever. But you don't want to breathe it, that's for sure. All right, let's get some white on here. So I said we had to carry our hair up to white. Not really, Malcolm. Is it Maycom? Mycom. You can do dry brushing across the top of the hair. The thing is that it's really not a very precise technique. So when you come down to these strands of hair, you probably aren't going to hit them all, or you're going to lose your shadows or things like that. So if you're going to try a technique that's like dry brushing, on hair like this, but it's not quite dry brushing, I do something called side brushing, where I load up my brush like so, get almost all the paint off of it, but still not as little as dry brushing. And then you use the side of your brush, not the tip, and you go down and you can hit the strands that are sculpted. You can see that. So this is essentially, I call side brushing a more accurate version of dry brushing. You're still using the brush to hit the texture that's present on the model, but you're not going at it like this or like this, so you don't risk covering up your shadows as much. So usually if you're trying to get like a better result than dry brushing, I will say, but that still uses the same kind of conceptual technique of running your brush over the raised areas, then I would say use side brushing. You can be far more precise with it. And then you can get more effects like this where you can actually see the strands. Because dry brushing also leaves a discernible texture that I don't like. So I don't use it on much except for basing materials. If there's a rough texture, then dry brushing is perfect. It can also be very useful for weathering effects, where you're trying to get kind of a dry and crumbly texture on some things. Like things that have been dirtied up. All right, so there we go. So I left my dark streak down the middle, so that's good. Now you can kind of see how I've got kind of a halo here, right? Kind of a halo of highlights around that center. And that's exactly where hair hits, where highlights hit hair on hair like this. If you go outside and you look at people that are under sunlight, you're going to see this little halo of white around the top of their head if they've got smooth hair. And so you always want to highlight with that in mind. And what essentially you're getting there is the light is hitting the top of the head and then bouncing toward your eyes. Just like with NMM, which we've talked about before. So, but as the light falls down the side of the vertical hair, it can't hit the strands directly. So you usually get kind of a halo around that top area. So I'm going to use pure white for that. Just going to put a couple drops down and drop a little bit of water into it. Doesn't need to be too strong. Where's my lid? There's my lid. Sure, no problem. Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, wavy life causes cancer. You are so on there. Yeah, I do not eat talc, but there are definitely, I mean, you don't want anything in excess, right? All right, so let's put some more water in this sucker. There we go. Got some white. Now we'll do our final highlight. Yeah, I'm indoors. And also you're getting fooled by my gray, right? Because like, you know, the silver that I'm getting, I actually am super happy with my hair. I love my hair as it's getting gray because I love that I have I'm graying at the temples, so it's super fantastic. I have a streak that goes across. It's lovely. I did finish the dragons, Cornico. In fact, I had Katie take them to Ron after I got out of town. All right, so let's grab some white, thinned down white, and I'm going to do just a little bit of highlighting. And again, I'm going to try to hit the strands mostly. This is the time I'm going to be more careful, right, to actually hit the strands I've got. And if you use side brushing, then you should have only painted over the strands, so you're good. So you just want a little tiny bit of white here on the top of the head to show where the light is coming from. You can kind of get it on the other side. You can use side brushing, or you can use the tip of your brush. This is probably a time when the tip of your brush becomes really useful if you're trying to be a little more precise. And I'm just putting a little bit of white up there around the top of the head. So then it's a little brighter, see? And then I'm also going to put it wherever I want to bring out a detail. So like the little strands around her face. This little lock, maybe on some of these streaks, maybe I'll make sure that I can see the highlight up here. She'll have a little bit of a highlight where this little strand of hair sticks out. So I'll do pure white on that. Anywhere the hair is sticking out or going to catch the light directly is where you put your white highlight. So at the top of this big thick strand for sure, which will also make it stand out better back there. And then the top of here, if I can see some strands, I can try to pick out some strands by putting some white up there. A little bit down here. There's more of a bold strand here that I'll pick out. A little bit more back here. Any big bold strands. I wouldn't, don't do pure white anywhere on the underside of the hair though. Yeah, I think that's a bow now that I'm looking at it. I painted it blonde, but it's a bow. So yeah, so there we go. So roughly blonde hair. Ta-da! And I can tune this a bit. You earned your gray hairs. Hey, I'm a dog mom, so I earned mine. Plus, I worked at Reaper for 17 years. Come on. No, I would not use an ivory. I would use a white zhejiang because the hair is shiny. It will have a white highlight. You could use a very near white highlight, like linen white, still get away with it. No biggie. If you wanted to add an additional, like if you wanted a highlight between this one and the pure white, yeah, then an ivory would be fine. I just went straight up because it's a small model. The smaller the model, the fewer steps between your shadows and your highlights. What do you usually do with your partially painted minis you use during your tutorials? Actually, C-Bellin, what I've just, suggested to do is that we should auction them off at ReaperCon. Because I don't finish the whole figure, but I often do a couple of different... Twisted Oma, yeah, Ed is enough to turn anyone gray. Right, so don't watch a lot of Reaper Live or you're all going to start going gray. But yeah, so essentially I packed them all up when I left Reaper, and I figured that I'd bring them back for ReaperCon, and we could maybe I'll separate them into lots and we can auction them off so that people can have the model in their hands and then watch the tutorial and have an actual example. Which I thought was better than just doing a giveaway on the stream, because then somebody who wins the giveaway might not really want it. I would be far more, because a lot of people come in and they just do hashtag free on some of these stuffs and they just to get whatever's free, but they might not value it as much as someone who actually really wants it as an example to improve their painting. So I really wanted it to go to people who wanted it to improve their painting. Ah, yeah. White leather or dragon white? White leather is grayish, Samurai Jack, so leather white I wouldn't use unless you're doing gray hair. Or if you're trying to do, if you're trying to do gray hairs and other hairs, or if you're actually painting a gray haired person. Always go with more, like Jazian said, like more of an ivory or linen white. Dragon white is pure white, so that's, it's the same color. It's slightly different as far as the base goes. But yeah. Good deal. Alrighty. Yeah, so if I wanted to, like if I was doing her and I wanted a little more drama, I might mix a little bit of a darker brown and do more of a shadow. So that I would get a little bit more spacing, a little bit more drama between the strands. And we still did go pretty yellow with this blonde, so you can see how if I would have started with, say, something more, a little more pale and not as yellow as this, that we would get less of a golden blonde. So yeah, but I mean, she's still a convincing blonde. She's quite yellow, but that's not a bad thing. Sometimes you want a very yellow blonde, especially if you're going to do very saturated color schemes. So if you're going to do a lot of, really more intense colors and less muted colors, then having a more vibrant blonde works with that just fine. Especially on a small model, it's not really going to be a bad thing. Yeah, titanium white. Spectral white would not work on blonde hair because it is purple Caprera. So it's a complementary color. You'd be doing a complementary color highlight. Beware of using off-whites that are not golden for highlights in a natural setting. When you start using off colors like maggot white or spectral, what you're suggesting, if you are using them as a highlight color for things like that are shiny, that will do then is suggest that your light source is purple or green. So beware of how you can use them to highlight like a purple or green thing, but when you're using them as highlights on anything that's going to read as shiny like hair or NMM, that is immediately going to say the light source in this area has color. So we get away with the yellowish highlights because sunlight is golden. So we naturally see that shift. So it reads as natural to our eyes. Alrighty. But yeah, you can use a tube titanium also if you want to use a white. It just takes more work, right? Because you have to thin it down to the right consistency. And you got to hope that there aren't a lot of fillers in it and that it's really highly pigmented. That's the problem with tube paints. I mean, that said, I've been working a lot with the Scale 75 tube paints, and I like them a lot, the Scale 75 Artist line. There are some colors that are becoming, like, indispensable that I adore. My vanilla yellow is totally becoming indispensable for me, for NMM. Yeah. All right. So cool. So there you go, guys. I think we're going to Pretty much. Wow, Justin was totally silent during this cast. Justin, are you there? Are you asleep?
No, I've been here the whole time. I came back and you were on a roll, so I was like, you know what? Let me just see how well this works, and you carried the whole show. You didn't even need me.
Yeah, see, Justin loves it because I'm low maintenance, right, guys?
Oh, she is. Absolutely.
Compared to the rest of your talent.
Yeah, because I mean, you and Josh are pretty close because he's used to doing this pretty regularly.
Yeah.
I think the only exception to this is probably going to be maybe Proctor because he likes a lot of conversation though.
Uh huh.
That's less that he's high maintenance and more that he just likes to conversate.
Yeah, yeah, he does. He's very sociable. Right. Exactly. All right, so there you go, guys. So now we have mixed our very own blonde hair, and we have done it, and we have highlighted it, and yay! And I'll do something else on this model too. I'm just trying to figure out what I want to paint on her. Maybe we'll do a specific color. Maybe we'll do like black leather boots and try to make them actually look shiny. That's fun, and she's got a good set of boots for that. Werner actually sculpts leather boots pretty well. So yeah, talent. Hashtag talent. I take that from the I'm an Overwatch League addict, Beach Nuts, and they call their desk people are their talent, and their casters are their talent. So I'm like, that must be me. uh, yeah, I guess I could have in general I'm pretty good at staying in frame. I've set up my camera so that I do tend to get a little bit close to here, so I can slide my camera just a little bit. I just don't want it to get in the room or in the I don't want to get too close to the edge. So, but yeah. All right. Yay. Yes, yeah, the test stream it helped us do well today, right, Twisted Noma? I actually don't have as much sunlight in the room today because we're doing it in the morning and the sun hasn't come through the window yet. Yes, very fun personalities at Reaper. You are correct. That is what kept me at the company for 17 years. That and miniatures, but all that sort of thing, paint stuff. All right, guys. Justin, do we have a raid?
Let's see.
I surprised him. See, he wasn't ready, but it's actually we've gone an hour and 10 minutes, 11 minutes.
Yeah, because since you've been carrying the show, I was sending emails, processing giveaways, doing
Yeah,
a million other.
doing the all sorts of fun. Exactly. All right. I'm gonna go back to face cam and oh no, I didn't deactivate my paint sploosh. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just look at the cam and talk to you guys. So if you have any other questions, guys, shoot right now while Justin is looking up a raid for us.
I got one for us. It was easy.
Yeah, Miss Timp, it's the new workspace, right? So I just need to set up like kind of a sticky tack that I can put my hand on to prompt me to stay in frame. And we'll develop it. I mean, this is going to change too because I'm going to be moving to the other side of the room once my desk gets here this week. So this is the temporary paint space, but I promise to try to improve. All right, guys. Well, this has been great. Thank you for hanging out. And yeah, we're being really good about isolating Achilles blade. I mean, I have to take Kiri out, but everybody here is really considerate about social distancing so far, except for like one person that I've met. But everybody else is being really good about it. So and California is very conscious of it because they were kind of at the top there at the beginning. So yeah, excellent. Yes, you're welcome, everybody. All righty,
Awesome.
are we ready?
Yes, we're going to be rating Just ISIS.
Oh, yay, just ISIS. All right. West Coast, best coast. Thank you. Yeah, you're kind of biased, Alpha. All right, stay healthy, everybody. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.